Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
Hi, we're here at Village Square Booksellers with Megan Price, and she's the author of the Vermont Wild and Maine Wild series about game wardens, Adventures of Fish and Game Wardens, and these are stories that were originally told to her by Eric News, and now she's kind of embellishing and going on from there. And we're going to have a little talk and discussion and learn about game wardens.
Or at least their stories.
That's right.
Well, thank you for inviting me here, first of all. I'm Megan Price. I was never a game warden. That's number one. They didn't allow short, fat women at the time. I don't think they still allow fat women. But there are a few female game wardens in Vermont and in other states. I write the stories of retired game wardens for a couple reasons. One is I joke that the statute of limitations is off. They can't get in any trouble if they tell me the truth what happened way back when. They also had more fun, quite honestly. They weren't videotaping everything. They didn't have trail cams. They didn't have computers in their trucks or their cars. When they went to find out who somebody was, they just had to believe them or ask who they were. They didn't Google them up first and find out their criminal history. They just had to approach a person. They didn't have cell phones that worked. They didn't have any communications for the most part. They're just off in the woods trying to handle the job. And they were pretty much on their own. I mean, I've got game wardens in these books. One fellow in volume 2, which is here, his name was Howard Brown. And I'm still fascinated by Howard. He's passed away now. But he started as a game warden in Maine right after World War II. I talked to him maybe 8-9 years ago. And Howard, who the guys called Brownie, started in Maine. There had been massive forest fires in Maine, which I never knew. And after World War II, these guys were hungry coming back from the war. There were no jobs. The country was re-gearing. There was a lot of poaching. Howard had to buy his own gun to be a game warden, buy his own gun, use his own car. I believe he told me he got 3 days off a year, but it might have been 2. And he was it was strongly implied that he not take all the hours together. Like you couldn't take a whole day. And it was 7 days a week, because that's what you did. And he was actually one of the guys you hear about that would shoot out tires. He made his own holster, and that almost got him killed, because he had a gun, but he didn't have a holster. And, guys didn't have money. He ran into some very interesting characters in his job. And he was the real deal. And I was fascinated by him. He retired in Swanton, Vermont, and had, in the meantime, become a federal wildlife warden, a federal agent. I can't remember the exact name. And he was largely responsible, according to other fellows, for actually preserving some of the species of birds that we enjoy now. There were ducks that were dying because of DDT, and because he would send his black lab dog, that the guys told me, that were so well trained, he would send this dog and say, go get him, and go through all this marshy swampland, get the chick, bring it back in its mouth, spit it out.
Yeah,
he would ban the chick
And bring it back.
and say, take it back.
Take it back.
And it would take it back. They would follow those birds as they grew all the way down the east coast to the Chesapeake Bay, and they found out where the birds stayed and started to preserve that landscape. And if they hadn't, according to other wardens here in Vermont, we wouldn't have the birds we enjoy. So to me, Howard Brown is like this quiet hero. These guys are heroes in my mind, because when I grew up, there weren't geese. There were very few geese. The bobcats were gone. I was a legislator when the rattlesnake, funny story, but I'm responsible, for better or for worse, for passing a law that made it illegal to kill the eastern timber rattlesnake. I'm from Fairhaven, and that is the last spot in Vermont where the rattlesnakes are. That's a long, funny story. I have many funny stories of my own. So these guys, to me, are quiet heroes. And Eric News came to me. I was a reporter. I've never been a warden, as I said. I was a reporter for years, grew up in Fairhaven. lived around the country because Vermont was very boring in the 1970s. And I lived in Seattle and Atlanta and here and there, and I missed Vermont too much, and I wanted to come home. So I came home, really realizing I wouldn't make the money I would have made if I'd stayed somewhere else in the country, but that when I woke up in the morning, I wanted to see Vermont and slate roofs and curvy roads and the seasons. So I had worked a number of jobs after being a reporter as well as a legislator for 3 terms, and I had gone to an outdoor women program which still exists in Vermont. Sometimes it's called the Doe program, sometimes it's called this or that, but it's to get women outdoors into the woods. And I had a tall, thin friend, and I'm short and fat, obviously, and fatter now, but this is about 20 years ago, and we looked and saw a little blurb in the paper. They were offering this, hunting, fishing, kayaking, blah, 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 and we wanted to go. And I said, they'll all be Amazons. And we'll just feel worse about ourselves. You'll feel more klutzy, and I'll just feel fatter, and I can't go on a hike. And she said, let's just go. And I said, no. So the next year they offered it again, and she talked me into it. And we went, and everybody was just like us and felt the same way, except for a couple Amazons who actually didn't last and went home because I guess they found it not challenging enough. And now they weren't eating bark and running 40 miles. So we said, well, good, they're gone.
Okay.
So we had a terrific time. And it ended up, when they did an evaluation, Eric Noose ran the program. He's volume 1 right here, Eric Noose's stories. Eric ran the program, and they had an evaluation. They sent you a form. And because I'm a writer, I wrote 16 pages. I said it was wonderful, but this and this and this could be better. Eric called me and said, do you want to run the program? And I said, yeah, but he said, I got the names of the instructors, this and that, and I'm doing a million other things. Why don't you run the program? And I'll pay you to do it. And I said, so I took my vacation. I took my vacation time, because I don't like vacations anyway. I like to work, which is writing. And I took my vacation and ran the program and worked nights and weekends and hired somebody, and my boss became a sponsor and at my regular job, and we scheduled it all out of where I worked after my regular job, put it together, and I ran it for 3 or 4 years and had a great time and met other game wardens who were about to retire. So Eric came to me 10 years later, found me, and I was out of work, very sick, and couldn't work anymore. I was just fighting some stuff and had no health insurance. And he said, I think you and I should write a book. And I said, everybody wants to write a book, go away. You know, and he came back in 6 months, hey, let's try it. And I said, Eric, you know, I'm really having trouble here. So I can't drive, I can't see, let's not, you know. Finally, I said, Eric, you go write your stories and I'll take a look at them. So he came back with a couple paragraphs and on each story, and I said, that's not a story, that's not a book. I said, why don't you just tell me? And I sort of think, I saw this episode of Raymond where he gets his wife to do everything, and I think that was kind of what Eric had seen the episode before me. So by folding the laundry badly and mixing the reds and the whites, she just took it back. She just took it back. So I kind of think that's what happened. But anyway, then I said, just tell me the story. And when he told me that they had blown up a dead moose, that they'd been attacked by this and that he's in the corn patch looking for a bear and comes face to face with the thing. I said, are you kidding me? He said, no, this all happened. I said, that is funny. That's crazy. And I realized as a reporter, we would know what the police were doing on a scanner, but the game wardens, and we never heard what they were doing. I mean, for years, you'd hear police are here and police are there. And if there were, there'd be 2 police, or they'd have a car, so that's some sort of cover. But in the woods alone, you're on your own in all kinds of weather. It's much more dangerous, and everybody you're dealing with has a gun, right? I mean, it's automatic they have a gun. That's what they're doing. They're hunting. So when you walk up to somebody, they have a gun. Now, if they've also got a deer they shouldn't have, or they're going to turn the gun on you, it gets pretty interesting sometimes. Vermont is, by the way, one of the safest states in the country. Most people who have hunting and fishing licenses all comply. Vermonters who hunt are very compliant in terms of the law and respectfully dealing with game wardens. But Eric's stories tantalized me, were funny. I did research on Amazon and saw that nobody was going to do what I wanted to do, the way I wanted to do it. I started writing, and I sort of wore an eye patch and was sick a lot, but it gave me something to do, and I put it away for months and not look at it. And when I went back to look at the stories, I said, oh my God, that's funny. And I mean, I know funny, and that's funny, and if I can just do this right, adults will enjoy it. I couldn't figure out how to write the stories. I went to a memorial service for a friend, and I saw a woman I had not seen in 25 years. Her name is Deborah Russell Sanborn. And I said, how are you? What are you doing? And she said, I am a librarian, a school librarian in Maidstone, Vermont. And I said, I've lived in Vermont pretty much my whole life, and I still can't tell you how to get to Maidstone. I said, what do the kids read? And what specifically girls will read, but what do boys read? And she said, the book they really tend to check out is True Attacks of Grizzly Bears. And I said, I'd read that. I love that. I'd read that. Mm-hmm. And she said, what are you doing? And then I had to say, I'm working on this book, and it's turning into War and Peace, and it's taking forever, and it's killing me. And when I told her I was writing these funny game warnings, she said, they'd read that. I think they would read that. And that was it. It turned the whole way I was writing these books. It just changed everything. And I realized, stop trying to use big words and make it all dramatic, and just tell the story, put it in the first person. So these are like campfire stories. You're right there with the wardens, and tell it straight. So that's how it evolved. I thank her very much, and she passed away a few years later of ovarian cancer. And she was a young woman, and it's just like, wow. She's mentioned in every one of my books in the acknowledgments, because without her, it wouldn't happen. Without Eric, it would not have happened. With the first book, as soon as it came out, it just sold, and we reprinted it, I think, 4 times before the first Christmas. It just took off. And I made Eric go sell it, because I said, it's like asking somebody, do you like my baby? How's my baby? Will you take my baby? And do you think it's cute? And I just couldn't do it. I said, I'm totally worn out. You go try and sell it. And he did, and he talked it up, and it just went wham. And I had, by coincidence, he said, how come you put volume 1? And I said, because if you've got funny stories, other guys have funny stories. So I just, I kept going. I found some of the wardens that he talked to in the books. John Capusta has amazing stories, was a warden again for 30 years. And some of these stories are scary. Sometimes they almost get killed, or they could be killed. They are attacked. So it's been a fascinating process to keep it going. Just really crazy, funny. The poachers are clever. I know some of the poachers personally, and I believe what these fellas told me. Sometimes they read them to me right from the police affidavit, so I know. I'll tell people, these are not, I change the name of the poachers. I do not change the names of the wardens. The photographs of the wardens, they're real guys, and it's in the back of every book with their photographs. So all these things that I've done with the real wardens, and the stories contributed by the wardens who are alive in Vermont, some of them have passed away, along with the people who helped me with the book. It's all Vermonters. The book is even printed in Vermont. Quite honestly, there's no book like it. And I knew that if I tried to do this, I'd be told what to do, and I didn't want to be told what to do. I'm old enough that I said, I was a reporter for 20 years, a legislator, or this and that, and I'm a stubborn old Vermonter, and I don't want to be told what to do. So if this is successful, I will do it my way, and if it's not, at least I did it my way. Me and Frank Sinatra maybe, but I'll do it my way. So it's been tremendously successful. It's been optioned for television now. The stories, I met with the guy again last week and had a nice talk, nice fella. And he grew up in Vermont and took Jeffrey Sharp and took himself to Hollywood after going to school in New York and and earned all this on his own. His dad was gone, and his mom was a reporter, so from the Addison Independent. And he works in Hollywood. He's worked with Morgan Freeman all over the world, and Emmy nominations and blah, blah, blah. And he likes these stories and wants to see them as a television series. And so do I, as long as these guys are respected. So he sees a little bit of Andy Griffith kind of thing, and I can see that. I can see this as a modern, woodsy, the good guys prevail, it's funny, and there's kind of very subtle lessons in it. And I read about Andy Williams, who I was fascinated by. He wanted to be an opera singer, and before he got into that television series, and he's Welsh and I'm Welsh, and that's part of it. And I just go, yeah, this could work. This is kind of strange, but it could work. So I still watch Andy Griffith, even though I know his son is now bald as a toaster. You go back to that, and I love Barney and Andy, the little stories. And it's just a wonderful thing.
Probably doesn't identify.
No, you don't watch that. You need to watch. He's funny. He was a storyteller before he got into that show. So So the series has been great. It's just been a wonderful thing for kids and adults. The stories go all over the world, which is also fun. I met a woman from Morocco a couple weekends ago, and at a craft fair, and she told me they had taken the books to Morocco. I don't know why. Maybe they just snuck into her suitcase, and that she and the kids read them. And it's hard to get books in English in Morocco. And then when they left, they gave the books to another American family there who treated them, she said, like gold. And I said, well, that is great. I mean, I guess they couldn't find any other books, so they're just all reading these every night and laughing, and it's America. So you just never know. Portugal, I know, France, anywhere there's Americans, especially Vermonters, who like the outdoors and want to get out there, and they miss home, these books go. So,
Well, in
it's nice.
French, they have hunting and fishing.
Right, even
We saw lots of fishing poles when we were on our barge.
yeah, there you go. I think you can identify with this conservation or poaching or wildlife altogether. I mean, I watch Crocodile Hunter. Obviously, I'm not going to see a lot of crocodiles here in Vermont, but it's just the looking at animals. I had a friend in New York City who teaches, and she said, the kids love your books. I said, really? Don't they think this is insulting? I said, I say things, I just said, don't they think like, what do they know about raccoons in New York City? Aren't they like sewer rats?
Yeah.
And she said, what?
What?
And she said, they watch Animal Planet. And I said, oh, there you go. That is true. I forgot about that. I mean, we're such a small community now worldwide that you can see things, identify it, learn about things, and ours, it's not that foreign to them. So, yeah. Anyway, it's been fun. It's I think it's conservation, and I really like getting kids to read, and people who don't generally read, who want the outdoors, will read these books as well. They've been very successful.
Peyton, do you go
that-
fishing and hunting?
Yeah.
You have a
Good.
dad? Yeah. Is it
You
fun?
learn to shoot a bow and arrow. pretty
What's the
much.
biggest fish you got? This big? That
How big, Paige?
Like,
Well, that's
That's
pretty
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good.
about 8-pounder. That's good.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Did you go bass fishing? Is that what you were doing?
Trout.
Trout? That's pretty good for a trout. That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Brown trout?
I think it was a rainbow.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. I bought another fishing boat this spring and almost killed myself. I have a lot of adventures. Almost drowned. Yep, that was funny.
Oh, no.
Well, there's more holes in the boat than you know. Yeah. So, yeah.
Plug?
Well, yeah, in fact, I told the story, the moth, and I've told the story, there's a moth in Burlington and different. I have had a lot of woods adventures myself. I've lived in the woods without heat or water or any of that stuff, and I've owned land, and I've tried to not kill myself, but I've gotten hurt a lot. And so one of these days I will write my own book about the craziness that I have survived. But I love the woods. I like outdoors. The ticks have scared me off, so I'm turned to water. But I forgot that I can't swim either, so that's never learned to swim. But yeah, the boat is a 22-foot Grady White, downriggers, the whole deal, Lake Champlain.
wow.
Yeah, no, I got serious. But it's a 1973, and that's a little bit of a challenge. There's things on there and not on there that should be on there, but they're not.
Is it wooden or steel?
It's fiberglass.
Fiberglass?
A little soft in spots, but so am I. And I thought it'd be a good deal. So what I decided was that in order to get men to help me, I had to have a fishing boat. I've had a lot of boats, but I needed a fishing boat, a serious fishing boat, because I need the testosterone to get the boat into the water and out. And I bought this boat and didn't really look it over. About it, sight unseen, i.e. in person, but I saw it on Facebook and Craigslist and all that. And the guy looked okay, and I just sent him a check in January and said, be down when the weather gets better, but it didn't get better till June for one thing, because it's pretty wet summer. And he said, no, it's good, and he sort of showed us how to run it, but he can only, he said the live well, the pump doesn't work. But that meant nothing to me, because I let him go anyway. I'm a fish and release person.
Yeah.
So we got the boat in the water, we took it out, it went great. Guys were excited, they ran it way fast. I said, cut it out, this is paper mache from 1970s, and it's just gonna blow like a piñata. I just want to call the boat the piñata. Kaboom, we hit the... So anyway, we made it back alive, and they were all excited. They got the downriggers going and all hooked up, and 2 weeks later we went out. And we're on Converse Bay in Lake Champlain. And I'm the captain. It's my darn boat, so I'm driving. I'm like, you guys can fish, do whatever you want, but I'm driving. I'm living the dream. This old tub and beam. And I said, I can't steer, guys. There's no steering. And they just think I'm a girl, so what do I know? She doesn't know she's a girl. I've had a lot of boats, and I know something's wrong. And I watch a lot of Deadliest Catch. And I suddenly struck me that Captain Keith is going, what's wrong with the steering? Check the bilge, check the bilge. So I had been yelling at them for quite a while to check the bilge. On the first trip, on this particular trip, we thought we were all good. We didn't really think about it. But something I said, I looked back, because trying to steer, we're almost getting swamped. It was like driving a Coke bottle 3/4 full of water in a bathtub. It just was going every which way. It was like, oh, spinning the wheel, it's just going. So I looked back, and I see something floating on the transom, on the top of the transom. And I said, hey, what is that? Why is that bottle floating? Check the bilge. And what? And they've been looking at the line so long, waiting for that magic fish, that they hadn't thought about what's going on. So they picked up the battery cover, and it's like full of water in there.
Oh, no.
And they said, oh, there's a little water. I said, a little. And one of the guys is a plumber, so it's funny. But a little water to him, he knows he can fix it, I guess. So no big deal. I'll deal with that later. But first, we got to catch a fish. I said, that's not supposed to be there. How much water? Oh, 8 inches a foot. What? No. I said, check the bilge. So other fellow snaps through, runs up, comes running up to me, flicks some switches, none of which work, comes back, opens the cuddy cabin, looks at the floor. I'm just trying to, he shuts the door, runs back. They have a conference, which I can't hear, and comes back to me and says, I think we'll head in. We head in, and we do make it in. And when we get the boat on that trailer, and getting me out of the boat's like trying to get Shamu out, by the way. It's not funny. So whenever we get into shore, I always yell things like, look, an eagle, as I try to get out of the boat without a net or a big, like, roll out this tubby broad out of the boat. Once I'm in, okay, but getting out or getting in, not pretty. So I'm yelling, and we get the boat out. They haul it out, get me out. Water pours out of the back of that boat. It was hundreds of gallons of water. It poured out for over an hour. I'm very impressed with that boat.
Wow.
Very impressed with that boat. What happened was, the live wells should be called dead wells because the tube to the dead well had snapped. And all the time we're on the water, it's sucking in water into the hull of the boat. Pumping it in instead of into the live well and circulating it out. It was just filling it with water. And the fact that that thing stayed afloat, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, I'm very grateful because I can't swim a stroke. But the first rule of my boat is save the captain. That is the rule. I say, look, you go on the boat, you have fun on the boat, you can fish on the boat, I just want to steer the boat. It's my boat.
Do you have life jacket?
I did have on a life jacket, but it was very cold. No one would have found us. We didn't have the cell phones. It just would have gone whoosh because it was so full of water. And we wouldn't have had time, 911, where are you? Oh, I'll transfer your call. You can't talk from the bottom of Lake Champlain. And it was really close, but they absolutely saved the captain. We had a terrific time. And we just laughed like crazy to be alive when we hit that shore. We were like Tom Hanks getting rescued from that island. It was like, oh my God, this is a wonderful thing. And we were the happiest people on shore. We had a terrific trip. And I can't wait to go out again because, again, you know, it was just fun. I mean, how much fun can you have? You have a new boat, that's not going to happen.
That's right.
But if you got an old tub, 1973, anything is possible.
That's
and the
right.
next time we caught some fish. Just gets better and better. So I love the outdoors, and it's fun. You know, all that stuff. And if you live, it's fun. If not, it's still a good story.
That's right.
Just somebody else is going to write it. That's all.
Very true.
So, yeah, these guys and their stories, they get hurt. They have a tough job. But it's worth it. I mean, now we have bobcat, we have fisher. Without these guys, we wouldn't have the moose. We wouldn't have the birds we enjoy. Some fellas used to just shoot birds for the heck of it. Hawks, osprey, whatever. They were gone. You know, there really wasn't. And these are the fellas that enforced that. And it took these many years, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, et cetera, to make Vermont what we've got now with the bears, which some people are a little, might be too many bears. But they haven't bit anybody yet. You know, and people are thrilled with seeing them.
Drinking the bird feeders.
Yeah, right.
Eating and drinking
Right,
all
you
the
do
bird
have to get
feeders.
those bird feeders in, or unless you really want one in your backyard. But I think the work that these fellows did has been terrific, and nationwide. And so there's guys nationwide now who want to talk to me. I'm like, okay, I got to get the van. I got to get 20, 30 years younger. I got to get out there. But there's more books to come, more great stories. They're just great. I want to do New Hampshire Wardens, some fellows in Massachusetts. There's an endless array of stories that haven't been done.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they're good guys. I got to answer questions because I'm just yakking here.
Peyton, which ones have you read?
I'm starting to read volume 2.
Volume 2.
Did you get to the dog named Satan? No, haven't hit there yet. Let's see what's in that one. There's some great stories
It's
about
volume 2.
There's some great stories about a dog named Satan. So
there?
the warden named him that because he knew one of the things they want to do is have a name that other people won't use. So you don't want to go out and yell Spot or I don't know, Smokey or something, a popular name. So he knew if he named the dog Satan, nobody'd be out calling Satan, right? Come here, Satan. Here, Satan. People, what? That guy is crazy. Well, he had to do that a lot because Satan would take off. So he's out on a beach in Colchester yelling, Satan, Satan, come here. People are going, oh my goodness, what's wrong with that man? And he has a weapon and a green uniform. That's interesting. And Satan knew when this warden would go, he knew when he was reaching for his hat and his gun belt and putting on his boots that Dad's getting ready to go, Dad's ready to go. And his wife, this fellow's wife, did not want that dog at home because the dog would get into trouble,
crazy,
would figure it
probably.
out, like, he's going, you're not leaving me here. And it would start like chewing on the furniture, let him out and he'd rip up all the flower beds. So whenever he was going to work, she'd say, take your dog. And he's like, oh no.
Take him with you.
Right, and sometimes the dog would obey and sometimes not so good. So there's a bunch of Satan stories about how smart that dog was because he would sometimes behave very, very badly, and other times he would just be perfect. And if this warden was saying, Satan, the people who had just seen Satan act so well was, what's wrong with you, sir, treating your dog like that? And Satan had gotten all kinds of trouble beforehand. So you'll have fun reading the Satan stories. He's quite a smart black lab.
Yeah. you like
Outsmarted
that,
his
but-
boss and owner all the time. Yeah, good stories. And this is where the warden I'm talking about, Mr. Brown, Howard Brown, is in with his stories. And he's the one from the 1940s, a really cool guy. And it's Howard Brown. Let me see this. Where is volume 1 here?
Right, first one.
Right here. We got it. It was Howard Brown. Here, I'll read you a little bit of this. The story about blowing up a dead moose has become like legend around the state, so I'll just read a little bit. Moose Vesuvius, I come up with the names for the stories. So it's how do you remove a rotting moose carcass stuck deep in the mud? Part of a warden's job is occasionally dealing with really gross stuff. So this topic was a good one. Any tips from fellow wardens were most appreciated, especially if it was shared over some homemade wine in the light of a campfire after a long day of work, as this tale was. This is Eric News talking. He was up in Maine with a bunch of other wildlife people, and they sit around after a day of, different events and whatever they've got to go to, and Brownie had the floor. He was a good storyteller, and we all liked him. This is Howard Brown I'm talking about. I leaned in to listen. Howard launched into a story about a big dead moose that was stinking up the neighborhood in his patrol area, which was in most of northern Maine. One thinks of a pristine pond and imagines chirping birds, green buds, the call of loons, jumping trout, and sweet mountain air. Brownie said all that lovely tourist photo stuff was there except the sweet mountain air part. The odor on the breeze from the rotting dead moose carcass at the edge of the pond was dead mouse in your truck air ducts times 10. It was bad. And anyone who's ever had a mouse die and decompose in their car, which I have, which is why that got into the book, it's bad and you cannot get it out. It can take weeks or even months for the stench to disappear. So compare the body mass of a minuscule mouse to a massive moose and you begin to understand the magnitude of the stench. I'm going to skip ahead a bit, but the tourists were coming. And they were opening their camps, and all they could smell was dead moose. So they called wardens. Brownie had our rapt attention when he first tried what he started with a cowboy approach, with a red bandana over the nose and his mouth to keep from gulping down bad things as he went to yank the moose out and drag it out of the pond. But it didn't work. I'm skipping way ahead here. He made a lariat and tossed it up and over an antler from the canoe. It took a couple tries, but it still couldn't tow it with his canoe. So Brownie keeps going. He's telling around the campfire again and again how he tried to move the moose and move the moose and move the moose, and he's sweating, and there's black flies that are being eaten alive. So Brownie said in the end he was going to try to chainsaw, but he couldn't get the chainsaw going, and he couldn't run it out of his canoe over the edge of the canoe to take the moose out piece by piece without chopping the canoe in pieces. And the neighbors are still screaming and calling. He's getting, his boss. And he was going to try an axe, but that wouldn't work. So what to do? Brownie scanned our faces in the flickering firelight for dramatic pause. No one made a peep. We were enthralled like Cub Scouts listening to a good ghost story. Satisfied that he still had our full attention, Brownie took a sip of wine and continued with his story. He said he had to admit he was stumped. He canoed up to the carcass, untied his line, let it float in the water, paddled back where he could get some perspective on things, and sat there. And sitting there, the mother of invention, Brownie had a big one. He didn't want any more calls about this stinking moose, so he decided he's stuck in there like a boulder. He thought, how do you get rid of a big boulder? And the answer came to him like a bolt from the blue. Dynamite. And how this story goes, and then how Eric decided without any details to try this himself years later with a warden way up in the woods.
Sounds gross.
Oh my goodness. It's gross. They almost killed themselves. It's hilarious. So, I mean, they just go, you did what? Their ears were ringing for weeks. Oh my God. I mean, they had to improvise. They had to do what they could do. There's a reason wardens don't get allowed to use dynamite anymore. This is one of them. Just one of them.
So what happens with the dynamite?
You gotta buy the book. You gotta buy the book. But it does not go so well. But he was alive to tell me. It's very funny. And years later, Eric came back to me. This is like 5 years ago. Because these stories go around and then people read them. So Eric was up, this is true, Eric was out hunting with his wife who got a moose permit up in northern Vermont. Eric's wife, Ingrid, also hunts a lot. So she's out with Eric hunting. They're trying to get a moose. They have to get up way in the dark and hike way over to where they think the moose are and go 3 or 4 hours through the dark and sit there. And they're not having any luck, and they've only got a couple days left. And it's miserable trying to get to where the moose are. Part of the reason is there's this huge compound of private property all posted and fenced that says stay out. So Eric's trying to go. And one morning he and his wife are walking along, and a guy sort of comes out and says, "Who are you? What are you doing?" Because they both have guns. And said, "Well, we're going hunting, and my wife's got a moose permit. I'm her second." He said, "Yeah, gotcha. You're not going on my land?" "No, that's why we're here at 2:30 in the morning, hiking all around to get past your land." He said, "Who are you? You look a little familiar." He said, "Well, my name's Eric Noose." He said, "Noose. Are you that crazy warden that tried to blow up a dead moose? Did I read about you in some book?" And Eric said, "You want to admit you're the crazy moron?" You go, well, yes, I'm that gentleman." He said, "Seriously, you're the one that blew up the dead moose?" And then he said, "Geez, that's a funny story." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you the combination to the lock. Go on through." And 2 days later, Eric got a moose. Well, his wife shot the moose, and they hauled it out. And it was all because of this story that somebody had read, and it's absolutely true. That days later, it came back around, and people said, "Oh, are you that guy? That is so." If you read these around a campfire with kids, or you just read them over a cup of coffee or a long day, you appreciate again, for me, Vermont, simplicity. Not just the way things were, but the way things are for them, and how tough it is to do this job well. I asked Howard Brown, for instance, I said, "Didn't the flies bother you and the mosquitoes?" Because I've been in New Brunswick, and oh my God, mosquitoes are the size of sparrows. You can't even breathe. They're in your nose and face. Yeah. He said, "You get used to them." Well, I couldn't. No. I don't get used to them. I've been there. And it's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. You just want to jump into a mud pond and cover yourself. It's awful, but that's what they had to do. And you say, you get used to them. I couldn't. I can't, but he could. And thanks to him, we, again, have species of birds we wouldn't have. So I find these guys they're my kind of heroes. They just Howard was living in a simple kind of double wide ranch house. You'd never know the stuff he'd done. And I asked him, he was a cool guy. I asked him, he was pretty deaf, and he's yelling at me. He's in his 80s, right? And I went to him, and I said, "I want to hear your stories." He said, "I've read books." Mine weren't out. He said, So I've read some of those Warden stories. They're no darn good. And I was mad. I'd driven a long ways to talk to him. And I said, listen, Buster, I've been a reporter all my life, and I know how to write. You just tell me the stories. And he was like,
Okay.
all right. He looked at me, and I thought, I hope he hasn't got a gun under his recliner. And he's, all right. And we're yelling back and forth for hours. He's telling me stories, this and that. So a year later, I'm hoping he's alive. I mail him a book. I thought, I hope he likes them, because I can't call him on the phone and I can't, talk to him, but I just have to go with what he's got. And a year passes. I'm hoping he likes the book. His stories are in there. This is another Eric story on the cover, but inside are Howard Brown stories. And it's winter. My books always come out October, November, December. February comes. I get a card in the mail. It's a Valentine's Day card from Howard. And it's like, yahoo! I mean, it was great that this guy liked me. I mean, this is terrific. I mean, I got a love note from Howard Brown. He's 85. But he was terrific. And when I sat there with him, I mean, he's in his late 80s. And I said, do you go hunting? Because he was in good shape, sort of like Abraham Lincoln, tall and thin and still rugged and sitting upright. I said, do you still hunt? He had a bird feeder outside. And I looked. He just turned to me and said, I hunt men.
Oh.
And I'm serious. A shot of adrenaline went down my spine. Like, holy God, he's not kidding. But that's what he did. That's what these guys do. They hunt men. They hunt the ones that kill the animals illegally. They hunt men. And I went, oh, he does. There's a story about him that I know is true. I'm not quite sure who it was, but he actually gave a citation to a U.S. senator who was hunting illegally, duck hunting illegally. He just didn't have the right setback, okay? And somewhere down in Maryland, when Howard Brown worked down there, and the senator worked down there, and I remember reading that when I lived on the West Coast. I remember, wow, somebody's gutsy. Even as a kid, you go, that took some guts. He gave the senator a citation, and I asked him about it. I said, I understand, because again, the other ones would say things. I said, I understand you gave a U.S. senator a citation. He said, yes. He's yelling, yes. I said, what was that about? He said, well, he was too close. The setback was 150 feet, and he was only 100 feet, and he was out with some lobbyists, and so I went up to him, and I said, how'd that go? He said, well, the other ones took it, and he said, but this one said to me, do you know who I am?
Oh, yeah.
You know who I am?
Those, yeah.
He said, yeah, I know who you are. You're one of the guys that was up there hunting too close.
Yeah.
Here's your darn ticket. Have a nice day, sir. And he walked away. And I said, ooh, we didn't go any farther than that, but I thought that was an appropriate response. Yeah, I liked Howard Brown. He didn't fool. If it was wrong, it was wrong. And he just had some great stories from the really good old days of shooting out tires and the whole thing. Most of these guys are from the 70s and 80s and the 90s. They didn't wear the vest then. They didn't have all the technology. They didn't have cell phones and sitting. I watch Northwoods Law and I watch all that. They're typing in a computer all the time, seeing who everybody is. They didn't know who you were. John Capusta, in one of these books, was way up north and cold night with his dog in the back of his truck, which had a camper top on it. His dog's name was, I think it's Mitzi. And John was there and he saw a car sort of pulled over, and he gets out of the car and he walks over because the car looks stuck. It's sort of in a ditch. And he's about to ask these guys if they need some help, because he's going to help them out and push it out. But he's got the state truck, right, and the whole thing. And this guy gets out and he's got on cowboy boots, a leather vest. This is not the way Vermonters dress. A cowboy hat, and he's built like Hulk Hogan.
Oh.
I mean, he's huge. And he just starts walking him. And John's a big guy, but he's rugged, but he's pretty square, and he's not that tall. He's maybe 6 feet. And this guy just starts coming at him. John says, you guys need some help or whatever? And the guy doesn't say anything, just keeps coming. John says, hey, hold it right there. Let's have a little talk. Do you need some help? Are you in the ditch? Whatever. And the guy just looks at him up and down and starts swinging. And John's like, what the hell? Trying to help him out. What's going on? And just bang, bang, bang. This guy and John fought in the cold in the middle of a snowy road. There was a fellow in the passenger seat, and he took off. He just saw a blur going out. This fellow punched and fought. John had a holster in his Glock in there, or he might have had a .357 at the time. The guy got his gun. The guy got his gun, is going to kill him. And the guy's out, you can't wrestle Hulk Hogan. You can only do that so long. John had called just before saying there was a car off the road that might need a tow truck. So he had called for kind of backup so people knew who it was. He's smashing and smashing. This guy's beating the crap out of him in the middle of the road. All of a sudden, John yells for his dog. His dog was able to nose up the flap on the truck camper, get out because he never locked it, came roaring out, and nailed that guy in the back of the shoulder. The guy had John's gun, was about to kill him.
Wow.
Wow.
John had no clue. You had no clue who he was dealing with.
Or something?
He was a murderer from the Southwest. And in Vermont, put him in jail overnight. John is black and blue and beat to heck. He's soaking in a bathtub, though he's going to work the next day. Figured the court would handle it. Somebody might call him and ask, They released that guy on personal recognizance. Personal recognizance!
Oh my God.
John's just about dead. Personal recognizance, they let him go. Guy's gone. Guy's gone. John was not pleased.
To shoot the guy.
I think it was Hardwick police showed up. It's in the story. But I shouldn't tell you the ending, but it's amazing. His dog was very well trained, and all the other wardens wanted puppies from that dog.
Yeah.
And a lot of them got him. That dog saved his life. I mean, there's no doubt, and he knows that. He's a terrific dog trainer, and a lot of these guys train their own dogs. They didn't spend $20,000 training a police dog and blah, 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 and the vests and all that. It's just they had to train their dogs. And Eric News had some dogs that didn't get trained so well. They're hysterical. You never know. Some dogs got it and some dogs don't. But that dog, Mitzi, was incredible. So these guys just have great stories. They have to figure it out on the fly. And John also went out on a snowmobile. That didn't go so well. I mean, just fishing stuff, all kinds of great kill yourself stories, which are my favorite, as you can tell. Because whatever I do, I've gone out and cut trees, and that didn't go so well. I've lived without everything in the woods. That didn't go so well. I've tried to build things. That didn't go so well. I mean, I'm all beat to heck. And eventually I'll do my stories. But these guys are just funny. And if they live long, you get a perspective, if you live through it, that creates that sort of, boy, that was amazing that I didn't kill myself. And that's my favorite. And that they save wildlife. They bringing the moose back was a real struggle. There's 2 stories in the new book, which is this one. Oh, this is funny. Okay. This is an ATV kid story, and if I can find the piece. So the illustrator here is Bob Lutz, who does a great job, and he was a warden. He's a retired warden. And this is called, what is this called? ATV Antics. There were some kids loose on ATVs. He was just trying to be nice and tell them to slow down. They shouldn't be on the road. But he could see no helmets, no registration, no blah, blah, blah. He was trying to be nice. Instead, they looked back, signaled, and went faster, got on the main road. So as he's chasing these kids, because now it's getting dangerous, they're going to kill somebody going every which way in the road. He said, now I got to stop them, have a little talk. One of the kids' machine flamed out. Pop! Probably blew a piston through a rod or something and went off in the woods. He said, well, there's one. I'll deal with him later. So he kept going, and these kids got loose on a highway, and they're going 70, 80 all over on a paved highway, and he's going, oh my God. And Bob's theory is, you don't keep chasing, all right? You just stop. I mean, you can find him later maybe, but you certainly, that's his. He said, I just didn't want anybody getting killed. You got to stop. Let him go. You can trace him later, sort of figure it out, the color and this and that. So Bob's going back, and he realized, I got one in the bushes.
Yeah.
And as he goes back, this is what happened. Let's see if I can find this. He glanced down the speedometer. They were hitting more than 70 miles an hour on this road up through Bakersfield. So that's up in the North Country. He goes to find this kid. Were they in violation of a laundry list of rules of the road and ATV use? Do they have a cause to keep up the chase? Sure enough, but was that reason enough to keep after them until they killed someone or themselves? Not in my internal law enforcement rule book. So he went back, and that's when I had an idea, a wild idea I thought that might actually work if I could pull it off. Yes, 4 of them were still flying high, but back a mile or so was the unlucky wildebeest who had pulled up lame. Was he still sitting back in the woods by his machine? How far could he have gone pushing it? What were the odds he'd found somebody to pick him up and his ATV? I'd only been gone a couple minutes. So maybe I could get him to talk. It would take a little bit of acting on my part, but I figured it was worth a try. I headed back to find that young man. I realized he would have heard my siren wailing all the way up the road, chasing his buddies, and he had no idea how it all turned out. I went back, found him in the same spot, leaning against the seat of his expired machines, ankles crossed. When he saw me pull up, he scowled, he kicked the green grass with his sneaker, crossed his arms across his chest, and he tried to look like a tough guy. I pulled my truck up fast, hit the brakes, sliding it a bit. I threw it in the park, opened the door hurriedly, jumped out, and moved fast towards him, a woods cop on a mission. I steamed up on him, stopped a few feet away, shook my head and said, "Listen, there was just an accident, a bad one. One of your buddies just got himself killed thanks to you and all your knucklehead friends." I pulled my pencil and pad of paper out from my breast pocket and held them at the ready and kept talking to him. "Now, no nonsense. I have to let the family know and the rescue squad too. I want your names. I want all the guys' names. I want them now. Start talking." So, no, he wasn't quite telling how that all goes and how it works out is the cover story, and it's I don't know. You guys all make the call. Then the case went to court. Very funny, and it's a great story about what's he gonna do to get it through to these kids. You gotta cut that out. You're gonna kill somebody or yourself, and it's another great story. And how again he had to think on his feet. How's he gonna help?
Yeah.
Seriously, how's he gonna help these kids stop this before you get killed? Just be responsible, enjoy it. But yes, I have an ATV, and yes, I've been hurt. I've had motorcycles, I've had everything. So mine's in the garage with flat tires right now. But the boat's out. The boat's out. So I'll just switch gears for a while. But I could see this whole thing, and I said another great story. Bob's got another great story in there where a young moose was killed. That's a nice one, and he ended up jumping this guy who was hiding a gun about maybe to kill him. The guy was reaching for his gun, and Bob the guy had on lots of clothes, it's winter, but they were poaching a moose, and this guy's just had his hands tight, and Bob had, one of them took off, and another one just stood there. He knew he could get him, and one of them, when he jumped and went to the ground, it just was reaching under his jacket. And Bob had to figure out, well, is he going for hand warmers or his mitten, or is he reaching for his license, or is he trying to get a gun to kill me? And the way Bob got him is also very interesting. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of it, but again, if guys got on a lot of clothes, it's really hard to get a hold of them, which I hadn't thought about. Right. If you've got a layer, it's all squiggly when you're grabbing them. So another great story. And these are two, I've known Bob for 10 years. I said, "You never told me these?" Just like, you just thought of these? What? No, you forget, kind of. I mean, and some of it is, a guy might tell me, Eric probably told me 40 stories. There's only so many. You have enough details to really write and keep bugging them to get more details. These are true stories, and I work hard to get them.
Matter of course.
What was that? Yeah, it's just they're just doing their job.
That's their job.
Right.
Well, let me break it up here
Yeah.
because you've got another event this
Yeah, that's
afternoon.
right. I got to go to another one.
Oh, great.
Anyway, thank you, fans. They're great books for kids and adults. They're used from Maine to Texas.